So thank you very much. We're back now in conversation with the wonderful Jeremy Irons. Jeremy, it's an incredible film to see for so many reasons. I don't think we have enough time to do it and your involvement in it justice. But just before we start thinking about the film itself, could you give us a sense of your own relationship to London? Because you grew up in the Isle of Wight, you studied in Bristol, and then, of course, as your career in theatre and television and film developed, you moved to London. What was your sense of arriving in London in probably the mid to late 70s, perhaps?
Yeah, I missed the 60s. I was always upset about that. I was working very hard in Bristol through the second half of the 60s. Oh, yeah. I missed the 60s. It was rather a shame, but, you know, there was still a lingering feeling of it. I managed to buy some ridiculous clothes in Carnaby Street, and I started. In fact, my first time in London, it was before I went into the theatre, and I was educated privately and had no idea what I wanted to do, except I'd done one play while I was at school. I quite enjoyed that. I played in a rock group, and they thought I should probably go into the army. Sort of commandos. They thought, this is a man we can get to jump out of a plane. But I didn't like that idea too much. So what I did social work in Peckham. While Peckham was being decimated, the terraced houses were coming down, and I would visit the old and the people who needed a bit of help one way and another, and lived with a wonderful lady in Talford Road in Peckham who was Scotch. She was a bit like an Aberdeen Angus. She had white hair with big horns. Her hair came round like that, and she would cook me meat and 13 veg every night. I worked at St Luke's in Peckham as many things, actually. I played the organ. Sometimes it's a pretty disastrous effect, but we had no organist, so it was better than nothing. I ran the youth club and learned that the sort of discipline that I'd been brought up under at school didn't work in South London, as I lay beneath sort of 13 kicking boots, having tried to keep people out of the youth club. I interviewed those people who wanted to get married. Crazy. I mean, I was 18, I think, 17, and they would come in and they would say, we want to get married, and I would take their notes and all of this. And we had two worker priests running the St Luke's, a social worker himself, but in a different area of London, and a lawyer. And I was the one who did the daily work around the parish. I earned, I think, £2.10 a week. My rent was included, and I bulked that up by busking in the West End. I played guitar, and I would do the cinemas, and I could earn sort of £5 a cue, which was gold dust in those days for me. So that was how I got to know London the first time, and decided that I quite liked the gypsy life. I thought maybe I want to be an actor. Anyway, so I went away and eventually was allowed into a drama school in Bristol, and then went on and worked at the Bristol Old Vic School and got to know Bristol a bit, and then looked at my wonderful peers that I was working with and could see that they couldn't afford a mortgage, and they were touring the whole time. They were moving around from rep company to rep company, and I thought, I suppose because I was middle class, I thought I actually want to have a house and a family and sort of normal things. So how can I make that work? I thought, well, I better go to London. So I came to London and worked for a domestics agency called Domestics Unlimited. They remember that magazine What's On in London? They had a wonderful ad in Domestics Unlimited. It said, a refined lady char from Mill Hill said, if I scrub the floor, I feel ill. employers said don't. If you can't, then you won't. But Domestics Unlimited will. And because I had a very early Morris side valve car, which worked sometimes, they relied on me a lot to go and do stuff where people had not turned up or whatever. And so I suppose I worked for more dysfunctional families in London than I knew existed. That, you know, sort of wives who had 3 children and the husband had left her and she had to go out to work, and so I had to look after and clean the shit off the floor. And I mean, it was appalling how some people live. It's unbelievable, because they wouldn't get it Domestics Unlimited in until things had got really bad. I also looked after people's gardens a bit, which was a risk on their part because I couldn't really tell the difference in a flower and a weed. But during that time, I was still busking. I was auditioning for everything. Saw myself as a theatre actor, and London, I cycled and also had my car, which would break down sometimes in Westminster Square and that sort of Parliament Square. But I felt very much a Londoner. I would eventually get cast in a show in London called Godspell, and began to sort of feel I was moving in the right life, the right circle. I never admitted to being an actor. When people at parties would say, what do you do? I'd always say I was an apprentice baker. And that would stop conversation. They didn't want to know anything else. So that was my London. And then I began to work at the Young Vic and for the Royal Shakespeare Company at the Piccadilly. And it's I love the place. I mean, I remember walking home once. I think I missed the tube, and I was walking home up to Hampstead, where I lived, and a police car came up. I was sort of walking. I think I was probably hitching, and windows wound down, and he said, "Get off my patch." I said, "What?" He said, "Get off my patch." I said, "Listen, my friend, I employ you and I'm walking home. You get off my patch." And he said, anyway, so he went off. And I thought, I'm in for it now. He came round again. He said, "Listen, my governor's on the prowl tonight. He's coming around. Don't let him see you because he'll get back at me." So I started walking on the pavement and then up the hill from Camden Town to get to Hampstead. But I felt very much it was my place. Camden Town was a very exciting place at that time. Covent Garden, we did shows. I think a couple of shows to raise money to stop people knocking down Covent Garden. Remember, they wanted to, and they were going to raise the whole market. And we did a couple of shows to support that. So yeah, those were the days, weren't they?
Those were the days. I mean, I didn't experience those days, but I wish I had, given how you've just talked about them. No, amazing moments. But the sense of the film is not so far from what you were talking about. It's precarious. It's about labour. It's about how we sort of fit or don't fit into the city. And, you came out of 1981 with 2 extraordinary works under your belt. You had The French Lieutenant's Woman at the cinema. You had Brideshead Revisited, thanks to Charles, who's in the audience with us tonight, on television. You had, everything at your feet. And then you chose this remarkable film that we've just seen, Moonlighting, by a Polish director who'd been in London for a few years. What led you to make that choice? And what were you thinking about the city at that point and how you might, progress your own journey through it?
Well, I don't know. I was getting used to being recognised, and that's which I didn't like much. But I sort of worked around it. I remember because I was always doing up the house or the flat, and I remember being in Chalk Farm at a plumber's supplier and buying some copper pipe, and bought the pipe, and I was signing a cheque for him, and he looked at the cheque and he said, "Whoa." I said, "What?" I thought there's something wrong with the cheque. He said, "Yeah, Jeremy Irons." I said, yeah, what? He said, well, you're not Jeremy Irons? I said, well, it's me. He said, no. Jeremy Irons is the hunk of the moment. I said, is he? Well, that's fine. All right. How much? So one was able to disguise oneself, but nevertheless, it was. I did hang about London. I didn't go to the American opening of Brideshead, and I sort of just found a way under, just to keep living a normal life, really. And I had terrible flu, I remember. I was getting over the flu, and I got this call from my agent saying, "Will you go and see Skolimowski?" Who I didn't know. So I went down to that house, actually, which was his house. I told her that. And I remember we sat on the floor. There wasn't very much furniture. And he made some coffee. I think we drank some sort of Polish stuff. And he talked me through this story. And I said, well, that's nice. He said, now listen, would you do it? There wasn't a script. I think this was very early January, maybe late December. And I said, yeah, it's an interesting story. He said, well, I'll send you the script. He said, but you think you could do it? I said, yeah, I'll do it. He said, because if you do it, I can raise the money for it. And that's the first time that anybody had ever said that to me. It was a wonderful feeling. Because actors, we hang about waiting for the phone to ring really all the time. And suddenly if you realise that you can generate work just because of what you've done, wonderful feeling. So I went off somewhere, I can't remember where. Oh, I do. Oh, no, I can't remember where, actually. And then he sent me this script in about two weeks. I read it, and we met to make the film after about 4 weeks. So we're now sort of end of January. I think we shot February, March, and we won an award at Cannes in May. So it's really quick. And there was a feeling of sort of being sort of terrorists in London. I mean, there's a couple of shots in there. I remember there's a very short shot, but it's a foggy morning in Hyde Park, or Kensington Gardens it was. And I come to work, and I'd come through the gardens, and I'd seen this fog, and so I got to the house, and I said, Scully, there's a fantastic shot in the park. We must get up there. Well, of course, to film in Kensington Gardens, it takes about a year to get the permissions, and you often don't. And so we whipped up there, got in the park on the bike, and we just picked up that very atmospheric, and then got out and got back to what we were doing in the day. And I loved the fact that when you're doing a play or doing a film and it's a real sort of group of people working together, it's a wonderful feeling. I remember those phone calls in the phone booth. Well, I'd done one, and I had another one to do with wet hair when it's in the rain. So I said, well, we can do the other one. And Scully said, yeah. And the first assistant said, you can't. It's 10 to 6, right? We knock off at 6, and we can't afford to go into overtime. And Jeremy's got to go back to the makeup, get wetted down, get all whatnotted, and come back. And she said, we'll never get it in 10 minutes. And it had been raining. And I was standing on the pavement just by the phone booth, and I felt on the floor, got up some water from the gutter, and put it on my head, and a bit more, and I said, I'm ready, let's shoot it. And I could see the crew going, all right. And they realised that we were seriously going to make a film. We weren't in it for the money, we were in it to actually tell the story and have and that was a great moment. And then, of course, we had those wonderful 3 actors, Polish actors, one of whom I have met since, but and looking at them tonight, I mean, it's wonderful. It's sort of like the Marx Brothers. They're so good. They hardly say anything, and yet they give the fabric of the film. I thought they were wonderful.
No, I mean they completely were, Jeremy. But I mean the film is inconceivable without you, and you are the anchor. You're in almost every shot. At the same time, as we were speaking before the screening started, and you've sort of hinted at that just now, it's almost a silent cinema film, isn't it? It's almost a film. You're embodied. You're in it. You're labouring. We almost never see work in the cinema now. What was your sense of that, of being on set? And you've already hinted at it, just wetting yourself when you need to. But what was the kind of guidance to the making? How were you kind of prepared for it?
I don't know. I mean, I do that, or I did then, because when I first bought a house and got an estimate from a builder, I thought, I've looked at most builders, and if they charge that for doing that, then I think I could probably do it too. So I learned to do everything. I learned to do electrics and plumbing and building and saved a lot of money by doing that myself. So I was entirely at home doing that build. I know all about those plumbing moments. And I just watched Scully. I mean, Scully Mosky, who has this wonderful sort of wicked, rather childish, dry, twinkly sense of humour, and I sort of based it on him really, and there was a lot in Novak that I felt. I mean, I'm quite instinctive as an actor. I don't work things out much. I just sort of feel the person and then do it as I think as I do it, because I feel them. And so, I thought of that poor man, a certain amount of money, not a lot, no language really, just trying to cope. And I love characters who have to cope. I feel very fond of that man. So I suppose, I'm sure Scully gave us some wonderful notes, but you never remember the notes that directors give you, and where ideas come from. But it's full of jokes, and the girl taking her blouse off, which he doesn't notice, and Christopher Logue yelling at him for putting in, Christopher Logue, the poet, strangely enough, who auditioned for Father Gabriel in The Mission and didn't get it. Yeah, but he was very good in this, I thought. He should have got it from his performance in this. Running towards the door and yelling at me for putting rubbish in his skip next door. And Scully, who turns up in the film about 3 or 4 times, first as the boss sitting there at the cinema, and then playing the outrageous handicapped man walking into the shop wearing a sort of violet coat. I don't know what he was doing, but he wove himself into the film. He was a lovely actor. He's done, that Cronenberg movie he did, what was it, Eastern Promises? Yeah. He's a lovely actor. Not a bad painter, but be careful if he ever offers you a painting, because they're always huge and you've got nowhere for them. But there was just and the 3 boys, they that dry humour. Anyway, it worked. I never quite know why films work. They're odd things, aren't they?
Well, they are odd, but they're also remarkable. I mean, it worked beyond imagining. We were talking again before we started this evening, and the film was acclaimed, critically across the board in the year of its making. It remains, this crucial benchmark of the 80s, a sense of what cinema could do in that decade. And yet it's, now it's outside of kind of recovery. It exists, but it's not framed and celebrated. And yet it speaks so presciently to so much of what we understand the world to be now. The film is really great on London and how it kind of puts a line down about how it's changed since. how do you think about? I mean, you've made so many films in different places in London, many films. What do you think of this relationship between the location of a film and your own experience of the city and your own experience of the film? How do you move through the city when you've actually filmed in it many times? Do you have an accreting kind of layer of reality and experience? Do you put it into another place? How do you think about the city now?
Well, things change. You change. I'm not the man I was when I made that. I'm not the man when I first came to London. There's more people now, and there's more cars. I don't think it's very valuable looking back. I mean, you have experiences in your life which you keep in your mind, and they have a sort of colour, they have a smell, they have a feeling. They say never go back, but if you live in a city, you have to go back. I remember I was invited out to Cartagena, where we shot The Mission, for some film festival, about, 25, 30 years after. And I talked to a few people about it, and they said, where you built The Mission with the river and all of that? And they said it's a housing estate now. And I thought, I don't want to go back. I prefer to carry the memories, and I carry the memories of that period in London. And I now, I suppose, am making memories of today in London. And maybe if I get to live a bit longer, I'll think back to tonight and think about how London was then in, what's the street called? The street? Harker Street, yeah. Which is so different to when I was doing Godspell in the West End, how, Covent Garden was. It was very different. So I think you make new memories every time, and there's no point comparing. A place is a place that sort of frames what you're up to. And that frame will change, and what you're up to will change. And I when I look back at movies or at cities, it's often with a wonderful feeling and remembering of things, but I don't want to spend my whole time saying, no, it's not like that anymore. Because things change. I change. And when I talk to my children about life in general and how it's changing, they're very bullish about it. They say, no, it's fine, we'll manage it. Yes, that's awful, but we'll deal with that. And they don't, they're positive, like I was when I was their age. So I think when you get old, it's fatal to think, things will never be the same again,
No, I mean, I don't mean to suggest a kind of negative looking back, but what's so powerful about cinema?
It's very difficult to be positive looking back, isn't it? I mean,
well, maybe
positive about the present.
Absolutely. No. But the thing about cinema, of course, is that whenever we watch the film, it's the present tense of that moment again. Yeah. And I was really struck by that tonight. We were looking at a city, a moment in time in history, of course, with the Polish experience.
The builder's still there.
They're still there. They're still working. That's now one of the most expensive streets in the UK, of course, De Vere Gardens. And 44 is still there with the same door. Whether Skolimowski still owns it.
I thought you might have asked the owners of it to come and see the film.
I mean, maybe they're here tonight.
Maybe they are.
We'll never know. The tool shop is still there.
Yeah.
It's expanded now to take on side properties. The supermarket is the shopping mall is still there.
Is it?
Yeah. But the supermarket has changed ownership. So the city is both present and past and proposing to the future at the same time. And Jeremy, what's so extraordinary about your body of work is I think what you said earlier. You instinctively inhabit the role and you embody it. We were very aware of how you were in the spaces that you moved through. And so
seriously, we've got some Ukrainian refugees living in our village,
right,
and in fact in a house that I organised. I mean, it's not my house, but it's a house that I got hold of, and we've had 2 families coming through, and I always think of them as Nova. I think that's what they're going through. They don't know the language. They're really vulnerable and great, but out of their depth. And when I hear this awful stuff being spoken about migrants, I really think we don't know how lucky we are. We really don't. To have to... I did a film once, or a play, and then we filmed it for the Beeb, called Mirad, a boy from Bosnia, about refugees. Refugeedom, which is very tough. I mean, can we imagine giving up everything we have and crossing continents to go to somewhere where we can't speak the language? And I mean, you've got to be pretty brave to do that. I think this film talks to that a little bit. I don't know how I got there.
Well, I'm very glad you did get there, because that feels absolutely relevant to what we're talking about. It's a film about how we look at the other, and this was decades ahead in all sorts of ways. And, without your kind of embodied involvement in it, we would see it very differently, I think. It feels time to embody the audience now in question and response. Already a hand goes up before the microphone has even been offered. Let's go to the gentleman at the end of the row there, and then we'll come to the... Yes, thank you very much. Please, if you could pass it along, and do speak clearly. Thank you.
Jeremy, congratulations. I mean, it's a very timely film. I mean, I got it immediately. I mean, I just wanted to ask about the filmmaking process, and also about the period after the film got its Cannes release, in terms of, because it's quite unique.
The bit after the what?
When the film got the award in Cannes, how was it marketed? I mean, how difficult was it to get it out there? Because today it seems quite a unique film, even when you view films made today. So I'm
not the man to ask about that. You should ask Michael White, who sadly isn't with us anymore, because he was the producer. He was the one who had to sell it. But the film business has changed. Sadly, we seem to have lost a generation. In fact, I was talking at dinner with some friends about an idea which is sort of floating around, that we try to get the Department of Education and the BFI working together, so that children for GCE sort of age can see a film a week in a cinema made within over the last 150 years, that great period of filmmaking, which is sort of coming to an end as it has been. And people say, "Oh yeah, they can always see it on Netflix." Well, how do you know what to ask for? How do you know what you don't know? You have to be educated, not just in film, but in everything that film tells you, which is about people, it's about history, it's about historical characters, it's about literature. I mean, there are. I think you could make a really good list of about, 40 films maybe, that were on the national curriculum. And once a week, probably on the nights when cinemas don't do too well, they're filled maybe at 6 and at 8, or at 4 and at 6, or at 2 and at 4 and at 6, with schools. Kids between the age of 13 and 15. And then the following week, or the following day, they, each in their different schools, have a class talking about the film. What do we learn from this film? Not just as a film, but what do we learn about life from this film? What do we learn about history from this film? You see kids wandering around the world staring at Rembrandt's and Renaissance paintings and whatever. Yeah, you learn a bit about life through those. But how much more could you learn through the 40 great films made between, 1890 and 2020. It must be a strong part for education. So anyway, how did I get onto that?
Well, I mean, a wonderful question that led to that answer. You started with the marketing profile after Moonlighting, and we ended with the whole history of cinema, which is exactly how we want a question and answer to go. No pressure on the next question. Thank you very much indeed. We'll come in a minute. Yes, please.
Okay, I just relate to your answer actually, because that film memorized. Sorry, does it speak? Yeah.
Is it working?
It's to an extent a historical document, because this film, documents the extremely important moment in Polish history, the 13th of December, where suddenly there was a lot of Poles at the time. I was one of them who came to Britain for holiday to stay. The martial law was declared, and suddenly we could not leave that country. And that film, and you there, you are embodiment of that piece of history. Yeah. So
no, you're right. If they showed that film, and then all the discussions about Polish history and politics, and not just Poland, but all those Iron Curtain countries would come up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my second question, actually, how did you feel filming in this particular house at 44 de Vere Garden, which was actually a family house of Jerzy Skolimowski, his wife Joanna, and the two boys who are there, Jerzy and Michał, whom I personally
He uses
knew.
everybody. He uses the family. My dog was there. That white dog in the neighbour. That's my dog.
So how was it to act in this environment, which was somebody else's actually house, and they lived there?
Yeah.
Because I was lucky enough to visit the house as well, and the house is there. And
who's living in it now?
Actually, this is quite interesting. I took my husband, who's English, to show him the house a year ago.
Yeah.
And there were builders again redecorating the house.
Of course they were.
And we knocked on the door because I said, it's incredible.
They were Lithuanians.
They were Lithuanians.
No. You see, nothing has changed.
Exactly.
Nothing's changed.
Exactly.
Thank you very much indeed. We'll go, if we could go to you at the back. Yeah. If you'd still like to say something. Yeah. Thank you. No, we'll just, please do wait. Yeah. The microphone's coming towards you now. Thank you very much indeed.
Novak hides the truth from the other workers for apparently their own good. Yeah. Did you approach him as a protective, pragmatic survivor, or as someone quietly being corrupted by responsibility?
I think I probably approached him as both. He had to get the job done. He had limited resources, and he was, as a boss, sort of protecting them. I don't think he was particularly moral. I think he probably did the right thing. It's very interesting. The end of the movie is interesting. People would say, well, what happens then?
And
what?
I think they were angry because he didn't tell them the truth, and they had a right to know.
Yeah. I think they were angry, but do you think they made the plane?
Do you think they made the plane?
What? Did they get to the airport, do you think?
Not if they had a fight like that.
Really?
Did they?
I don't know.
What would you think?
No idea.
But what do you think, as the characters and those wonderful Polish actors?
I mean, I think you see their world fragmenting, which is what had sort of happened at home. So, but what happens at the end, I don't know. But I think it's up to all of us to decide.
I mean, it's perhaps, Jeremy, it's the great trolley movie, isn't it? I mean, it starts with an airport trolley, and it ends with a shopping trolley.
Yeah.
And in between, it's trolleys all the way, basically.
It's trolleys all the way.
You know, if you don't have a trolley, I mean, you lose your bike, which is a surely a homage to Bicycle Thieves at a certain point. But then, of course, when you get done for shoplifting, you have the right bike in place without your knowing, of course, when the shopping's been taken. Trolley movies are a subgenre of cinema that will be explored in future seasons here at the Garden Cinema. Molly and George, it's logged now. Yes, please. Could we get the microphone down here if we could? Thank you very much. Thanks, Jason. All the way down the front. No, all the way down the front here. Thank you. No, short and sweet, but still amplified. Always amplified. Thank you very much.
So, what is the Moonlight? Why the name is Moonlight?
Moonlighting, because moonlighting is, well, it's many things. It's a good question, actually.
Hope?
Moonlight, I suppose, is hope, but it's also doing something on the side. If you moonlight from a job, you're sort of working outside the system. Would that be correct, Charles Sturridge? Could you? There are other meanings. There are. Yeah. Anything else from you? That's very good. I thought he was nodding off. I thought I'd just chuck something at him.
Yeah, moonlighting is about doing a job without papers and without record. I suppose we'd call it now. My son Tom is 21. He would do a side hustle.
A side hustle. Yeah.
I mean, it's changed a lot. Less poetry, harder reality. Young people today.
Side hustling.
Thank you, please. Yes, please. Here, Jason. Yep.
Jason, you can't hang about like this. No, you've got to.
You're right. Thank you, and then we'll go. Oh, yeah, thank you.
Hello. I was wondering what's the project that you've always wanted to do but haven't got to yet?
Well, I've always sort of been of the opinion that if I'd really wanted to do them, I would have done them. So I tend not to regret. I regret that I missed a few roles I would have liked to have played. I regret that I've never directed a film, but I think I'm too lazy. And actors are very spoilt. They can do 2-3 movies a year. And if the movies are terrible, they just disappear. And if they do well, they get huge acclaim. And they earn very well. Whereas a director, works for 2 or 3 years to get a movie off the ground, and then works through, and then a year selling it, and that's sort of 4 years, 5 years of his life. And if it's a disaster, he gets all the blame. So it's very tough, and I think I've been spoilt, and that's partly why I've never done something which I have a slight regret I haven't, which is to direct. But no, otherwise, I'm the age I am. I don't have great sort of desires to do anything particular. Although you sometimes you get ideas, and you have projects which may work or may not work. But no, I think I'm a sort of rather simple person. I'm glad I've done what I've done, most of it. Certainly the things that I've enjoyed doing, which is most of it. And I don't regret not having done what I haven't done. I've just, I'm rather boring in that way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. And we'll just go to yes, please, here. Thank you.
Hello, Jeremy. You mentioned just before the film started that this was the first project you did after Brideshead. And I'm rewatching it at the moment, and it's still utterly divine. And I just wanted to shout out to Charles Sturridge as well, because he's fantastic. Given that it's such a departure, the role of Novak is such a departure, I just wanted to ask, was there a degree of intentionality in that being your follow-up role from Charles Ryder?
I once had a friend who's sadly died now of AIDS, but he was a great director, Czech. Miloš Kirek was his name, and he directed me in a few lunchtime shows, Diary of a Madman, and we were going to make Crime and Punishment together. And I remember sitting in a cafe do you remember that cafe? Oh, yeah, it was called the Regency. And it's in the road that goes from Mossbross down to St Martin's Lane. It's on the corner, run by a lovely lady. And we used to eat there all the time between the shows and whatever. And he said to me one day, we were sitting, it was packed, I remember, and he said, Jeremy, I have to tell you, I can't do accents, as you'll learn from the film. But he said, you have to beware of Noel Coward and West End comedy. Because you can do it very well, and your career will. And so I knew that I had to try and. I think it's my nature to want to go somewhere that I haven't been before. But I knew that I was tall, I was English, I was middle class, I looked like I looked, and I could go on a route as an actor which wouldn't give me the fun that this sort of film and the other, somebody said, come and make a film in France about Proust. And I thought, well, I can't speak French, but I'll learn French. And so I did that. And I'm always trying to look for something which tests me, which interests me. I get bored terribly easily, and filming, you'll be surprised to know, is extremely boring in the main. So I suppose it was instinctive. It was just a feeling. I thought, yeah, I like this man, Skolimowski. I like his style. I like his mind. Maybe we'll have fun.
Thank you.
Very good. I mean, I like the idea that you're not a Noel Coward, and you said earlier to us before the event that risk is extra life, and it's a very powerful line. And in a way,
I don't know who said it. But
you said it. You told me.
Yeah, I know. I said it to you, but I think I must have read it somewhere. I don't come up with that sort of thing.
That's the official. Well, Jeremy, not anymore. You know how the internet works, right? Risk is extra life. Jeremy Irons, 2025. I agree with it. I believe it. You said it.
But I ride a motorcycle, and I think about that when you're on the motorway and you're sort of doing probably more than you should be, and you see that barrier flicking past, bang, 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 and you think, give a twitch and I could be in there. And it makes you feel so alive, and that is risk, and it is giving you extra life. And I think I look for moments like that in life, whether it be on sailing boats or horses or with people or whatever.
We can't follow that, and we're not going to formally. Risk is extra life. We've had extra life tonight with this incredible screening. Thank you so much to the Garden Cinema. Thank you to the London Review of Books. Thank you to Jeremy Irons.